Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the next installment, numero four, numero cuatro, I'm sorry, of YinzersYak. And this is going to be our recap day and looking at Thursday night's game for this upcoming week. So I'm going to let Marty take it over for a change since, I love to do all the talking and, just let him chime in when I feel is best. So
When you allow me to.
yeah, exactly. So we're gonna switch it up a little bit, and Marty's gonna do a little bit more talking, and I'll keep my mouth shut, huh?
Alrighty, guys. So we picked a couple games this past week. We're gonna start off with one of the games that I picked, Houston and Jacksonville. I had Houston win this 20-17, which I was pretty on point with that. Ended up being 20-7 in the end. Houston winning. This is an interesting game. Blake Bortles finally got benched after what he got benched, I believe, after the going into the third quarter. He had two fumbles. He was looking terrible out there, and Cody Kessler came in. I think Cody actually looked pretty good. From what I just heard before we started here, Bortles was announced as the starter this week, which I don't really understand that whatsoever. But the biggest talking point from this game, I think Houston continued to somewhat struggle on offense. I feel out of the three turnovers that they had from Jacksonville, they got 10 points off of that, which this game could have been a lot closer had Jacksonville not turned over the ball so many times. Excuse me. As well, coming out of this game, like I said before, Houston's offense was struggling a little bit, but Lamar Miller did have a pretty good day on the ground, which is good to see. It's a positive for them here going forward. On the other side of for Jacksonville, their running game is still in shambles after picking up Hyde this past week. He didn't actually play, and like I said, once again, they just looked terrible. They couldn't get anything really going on the ground. Blake Bortles was actually the leading rusher for them before he got benched. He had 6 carries for 30 yards. T.J. Yeldon was behind him with 12 for 28 yards. So that's definitely something that they need to figure out here going forward. Hopefully, Hyde can have some type of effect on their running game. He was doing pretty good in Cleveland, so I expect them to do something, maybe anything for Jacksonville. Jacksonville's D did look a little bit better this week compared to getting blown out by the Cowboys, but they still have a lot they need to work on as well. And at the end of the day, I think more than anything, the turnovers for Jacksonville are what cost them this game. That and a terrible offense. Let's throw that in there too.
Yeah, I think they're definitely not looking as great of the Jacksonville of last year. So I think in regards to that, it's kind of just speaks to how their season is kind of gonna go or trend towards. I see them just trending more down than up for the rest of the season. I don't think they'll necessarily like tank the rest of the season, but I don't see them finishing with the too great of a record, and I'd be surprised if they did end up making the playoffs. I think their QB situation is just too much to deal with, and their, like you said, their run game is very challenged as of late. They did bring in Hyde. Obviously, he didn't play in this game just because of a little preparation time. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of difference even when he comes in. The latest news on the Fournette injury is he's looking to be back, I think, week 10 or week 11. So they're still without him for a couple more weeks. And I think even when he comes back, he doesn't really open up the offense a whole bunch, only because if you looked at their games last year, when when Bortles didn't really have that great of a game, neither did Fournette. They kind of both need to be clicking for the run game to open up. It doesn't seem like the run game clicks if you know whatever quarterback happens to be in there at the time, whether it be Bortles or Kessler going forward. But if that passing game's not clicking, I don't see the run game progressing anywhere. So we'll have to wait and see. Kind of on the same page though for that. Deshaun Watson had 12 completed passes. That was it. He had 139 yards. He had a touchdown. His passer rating was 81.8. So obviously not a spectacular day in the office for him. But I think the highlight of the offense was definitely the run game, and I think just because of how their defense played and how they've been playing, which is pretty well, that they didn't really need their offense to do much against a struggling Jaguars team.
Yeah, they the one thing with their offense is they've managed to have a substantial, somewhat substantial splash play in these couple games. There was a 31 pass to DeAndre Hopkins at one point in this game. It's good to see those. You're seeing flashes of what the offense was last year. It just fully hasn't come together quite yet, but you definitely are seeing flashes.
Yeah, and it almost makes you think too, because for not the first time this season, DeAndre Hopkins was not their leading receiver in this game. Fuller and Hopkins were both targeted 8 times. Fuller caught 6 of his passes for 68 yards, and Hopkins only caught 3 passes for 50 yards. Um, Granted, Hopkins did score a touchdown, and Fuller didn't, but it's just kind of odd to see the disconnect there, especially with how good of a receiver Hopkins is. So I think it kind of just once again speaks on the offensive struggles that the Texans have had. I think going out of this, they need to look positively at their defense, because they've been playing really good, and on basically all sides of the ball, running and passing. They're not getting blown out any game. It's just a matter of if their offense can do just enough to squeak a win by.
Yeah, and I mean, if the offense could start clicking with how good this defense is playing, they could end up being a real threat. But it remains to be seen if the offense can actually get clicking here.
Yeah, and speaking of the offense, they held them to the Jaguars to a total of 259 offensive yards, which it obviously is pretty darn good, um, considering 15 first downs by both teams. But obviously, Texans come out a lot better on paper because of their points off turnovers there. But I think this would have even been a lower scoring game if there weren't for the 2 fumbles.
Yeah, it could have definitely finished 10-7 with how poorly Jacksonville's offense was performing as well. But they definitely made the most of the turnovers, which is good to see at least.
Most definitely, you always want to capitalize on those, especially when your offense can't really maneuver down the field too well.
Absolutely. Let's see. What in that game do we have? Baltimore and New Orleans for you, correct?
Correct. This one I thought was actually kind of, I hate to use this word, but kind of boring. Towards the beginning of the game, nobody scored anything through the first quarter. The second quarter got a really slow start to it. It ended up being 10-7 going into the half. The Ravens, and then the Ravens kind of looked like they were just going to continue on. Neither team really dominated, but the Ravens kind of looked like they continue on to just kind of coast through and get the win. Obviously, like I said last week, they're not a super exciting team to watch offensively. They definitely rely on their defense, but Saints didn't score a point in the third quarter, not a field goal or anything, um, but come back shooting in the fourth quarter and scores 17 unanswered. And then obviously the miscue of the game with Justin Tucker missing the only extra point he has ever missed, just for statistics. I'm glad I can talk today.
Okay.
Statistical analysis. Justin Tucker is 222 for 223 on extra point attempts in his career. So if you want to put that into terms that obviously he had to miss one, and I think the extra point that he finally did miss here was a very costly one, obviously. So I think really the Ravens aren't dropping too low for me on like power rankings, or like if they're looking any worse or not. Obviously, with 2 losses as of late, though, doesn't look too great for them. But I don't see them sinking too much. Their defense is just way too powerful of a threat for other teams to just coast on by and blow them out of the water. I think they did a real good job of holding the Saints to, which, obviously they have a very powerful offense. They only held them to 339 yards, and third down efficiency was under 50%, which, you always love to see. But I think just keeping the Saints offense under 350 yards is definitely a good tale going forward to study that tape and stuff. And obviously, if that extra point doesn't get missed, then this is a whole different ball game.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely up for grabs going into OT there. I like to what I like from the Ravens is their offense continues to be able to move the ball down the field pretty effectively. The run game really isn't there for them. They could definitely be the complete package if they could get the run going. But if it weren't for their defense, especially with the stopping the Saints on third down, this game could have been a lot more higher scoring higher scoring game, as well as a lot more yards up on the board. But they should be happy with what they held New Orleans to, I believe. Could have been a lot
Yeah,
worse.
and yeah, most definitely. I think too, the Ravens need to look at. It looks like they're kind of trending more towards Alex Collins getting the bulk of the carries in the games now. Him and the oddball plays of Lamar Jackson lining up under center and stuff. But he had 11, and he had 23 rushing attempts for the whole game. So obviously not a lot. They like to rely on that pass, which Joe Flacco, and he had 279 yards, threw for 2 touchdowns, and had a decent day at the office. But I think with their weapons on offense, John Brown obviously very impressive for not being such a elite, high caliber talent, like coming out of the gate. Came out with 7 receptions, 134 yards and a touchdown, and he just keeps piling up those stats every week. So I think they need to focus on him and getting maybe Collins a couple more carries a game to kind of see what he can do, because he was pretty good last year before their season kind of tanked, and they were plagued with a bunch of injuries and stuff. But I also think along the lines with the run game, Mark Ingram had 32 yards total. This is significantly less. This is half of what Alvin Kamara had for the game, and Taysom Hill, their weird like flex package quarterback that they like to use, like the Ravens like to use Lamar Jackson, had 3 more yards than Mark Ingram on half as many attempts. So I think maybe for the Saints, I going forward, who they start, I don't know. Kamara is obviously looking like the better option right now, but their tandem they had last year was really good. So maybe it's just a matter of getting Ingram back into the swing of things after obviously not being around the first 4 games.
Yeah, I think that's what it is for Ingram. And just touching on Hill real quick, it's really interesting to see them put him out there in the backfield and what he's been able to do. Even with Jackson in Baltimore, it gives you a different look. I mean, you pretty much know that he's going to run when they put Jackson out there, but for whatever reason, teams just can't seem to really stop it.
Yeah, and actually, they let Lamar throw a pass this game. So I think they're trying to switch it up a little bit so that not all teams, have the understanding Lamar Jackson's on the field. He's going to run the ball. Um, he threw a 5 yard pass, obviously not super significant, but they are trying to be a little bit more versatile with him and not just completely running it as soon as he gets on the field. So maybe trying to switch it up and throw defenses off.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I just noticed from watching this game when they have him in there and they have Flacco go out wide, there's something that teams are going to start doing. I think is rushing the quarterback a little bit more because Flacco's just on the outside, not doing nothing. So that's one less man you have to cover. I really don't see them throwing a pass to Flacco either. So it could
Yeah, I
kind of
actually
come back to bite them if teams start to catch on here.
I saw his highlight reel on it was a I think a compilation on Twitter. Every time that he lined up as a receiver, he doesn't run a route or anything. He just kind of stands in place. Kind
Yeah,
of odd to see in the NFL. Obviously not even putting any effort forth, but I guess if it works, it works. But I think for the sake of the team that Flacco needs to at least fake a route run.
Yeah, I mean, they could at least send him 10 yards down the field and cut back something.
I understand not wanting to get your starting quarterback injured and all, but they all do it. All of the teams that run these types of plays and stuff, their quarterbacks going downfield blocking and stuff, and for Flacco to just kind of stand in place kind of gives me Tom Brady esque vibes.
I don't know if he's that bad. Well, he's not afraid to tackle somebody at least. But I
Yeah,
get what you're
although
saying.
the last times that Tom's went out for a block, though, he's actually attempted it. So I guess Tom's doing a little bit more than Joe nowadays.
Getting brave in his old age. That's what it is.
Yeah, guess he
Funny.
doesn't have much to lose.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Alrighty, let's see here. Moving on to the next pick, I had Kansas City versus Cincinnati, Sunday Night Football. I had Kansas City winning this one 34-24, which they did win, but it was a little bit more far apart than that. They won 45-10, blowing out the Cincinnati Bengals. Excuse me. 1 second, there we go. Just edit that out. All right, so they beat the Bengals 45-10 in a blowout. My question for this game: are the Bengals finally bungling it up? Uh, Kansas City's D, they looked pretty good. That's what I take away from this game. It's hard to buy into it though, going up against a pretty lackluster Cincinnati offense. Mahomes once again was absolutely huge. Threw 4 TDs, 458 yards. He has been fantastic. He's been the leader of this Kansas City team. He's been able to pretty much outshine and outgun every quarterback, obviously other than Tom Brady in the previous week. But he's done everything that they need him to do to go out there and get them to 6-1. It's a wonder of mine if any offense can really keep up with them at this point. Obviously, the Patriots did last week, and we saw what the Steelers did. Even they kept the game close, but I think Mahomes and Kansas City just have that extra step on offense that not many other teams really do. They're really good at spreading the ball out, especially. They had multiple receivers, 11 to be exact, 11 different targets for Patrick Mahomes. So they have plenty of weapons, and that's pretty much been the story all season. Every single game for them, he has spread the ball out fantastically. Keeping it with Kansas City once again. Tyreek Hill had a big game through the air, as well as Kareem Hunt had a big game on the ground. Like I said, the offense is pretty much all over the place for Kansas City. They're very dynamic to go up against. And it's hard even to not give credit to them going up against like I said, a lackluster Cincinnati D and an offense. But they definitely did get the job done. Perfect. We talked about this in our preview on Friday about Burfict possibly being a factor in this game. I was saying he was going to go headhunting. He was absolutely a non-factor in this game. I believe he only had 2 tackles in total, and other than that, he was pretty much invisible out there, which it was good to not have to really deal with them. Kansas City did not.
Yeah, and I'm sure if you saw the same video I did, I didn't get to see it in game, but the same highlight reel of Kareem Hunt stiff arming Perfect down into the
I
ground,
actually did not see that.
and continuing on for another like 8 yards. I think that the 98% of people that don't like Perfect in the league, the non-Bengal fans, um, that I think everybody got joy out of that. Yeah, just stiff armed him right into the ground and then just continued on running. It's kind of funny, and yeah, like you said, I didn't really see him being a big factor. That was obviously one of his missed tackles there, but 2 tackles total in the game obviously isn't going to do much for your team there. I just I think Cincinnati didn't really put together much period against the Chiefs. And their defense definitely I think needs to step up, but obviously their offense didn't do too much in this game either.
No, they were pretty much coming from behind the entire game. The defense absolutely got shredded, giving up 551 yards total. They didn't look that great last week against the Steelers either, despite a close game. But I think they're at a point now where they should definitely be worried with offense and defense both struggling for them. Going back to Kansas City, one more thing with them real quick about their offense and how overpowered it is. Looking at the games this season, 6 of the 7 games for them, they've scored 30 plus points. In their only loss, they actually had 30 plus points as well, and they have a win with 27 points. It's going to be really hard to beat this team, and I think if their defense can continue to have even mediocre outings, they could definitely be a threat all around. But even the offense alone has proven to be able to carry them. What Patrick Mahomes has done there this year has just been astonishing.
Yeah, I don't think anybody coming out of the gate really thought that Mahomes would be as good as he is right now in himself. Thought he would just kind of fit under the categories of the rookie quarterbacks this season. That nobody's really been an all star. But I think if anyone, Mahomes definitely has, and I think going forward, the non-existent defense of Kansas City obviously didn't do too bad of a job against the Chiefs here, but I mean, excuse me, against the
Cincinnati.
Bengals here, yeah. um, Obviously didn't do too bad against the Bengals, but I also think that's against a struggling team. After they got that loss on the Steelers, looks like they didn't come out too hot out of the gates for this game, and kind of just continue that downward trend for the game, and just kind of let themselves sink into a hole. And I think going forward, if the Chiefs are going to continue this overpowering offensive run, that they definitely do need to have some type of defense to be able to back them up, so that in case one of these games that their offense isn't doing so great, once they run into a pretty good team, which obviously they still have to play the Chargers twice this year. So Chargers have a pretty good defense, and Chargers have many offensive weapons with Melvin Gordon coming back. Obviously, he wasn't a factor this week. I think that's why the Titans game was so close, because he was a game time decision. They didn't want to risk him getting injured before the game in London, especially with unfamiliar territory.
Mm-hmm.
So they sat him. Um, I I believe them playing the Chargers might be a true test too, also to see if their defense can stop anything while their offense also is up against a formidable opponent. So we'll see going forward, once they start facing these teams that are balanced on both sides, that if their defense is as mediocre as it's been, if they'll be able to kind of continue the dominance that they've had all over the first 7 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point it's really going to catch up to them. You could argue that it caught up to them against the Patriots because they couldn't get that one stop that they needed. But the Chargers games are definitely going to be a real test for them to see if they're able to hold up.
They also play the Ravens in the 9th of December. So they play. Yeah, actually, it's gonna be a tough one. They go Chiefs on the 19th of November. Play the Raiders, and then after they play the Raiders, they go into playing the Ravens, and then the Chargers, and then the Seahawks. So those, out of those, 5 games I just listed, 4 of them are going to be tricky for them, and especially with the excellent Ravens defense. I think that's maybe when we see a little bit of the stopping of the overpowered high scoring offense that the Chiefs have.
If it's stopped though, it's a big if.
Big if. Like I said, we'll see when we get there, but I think they can't continue this the whole season, but who knows? Might be able to prove me wrong, and I'm just completely blown away by the stats at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, if they do, credit to them, but I definitely see them having a hiccup or two along the way. It's just part of the season.
Most definitely. Yeah. So my pick for the week was the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Tennessee Titans. This was one of those games that came down to a weird decision at the end there, to go for 2 instead of an extra point, just go into overtime. I, I was a little confused why they went for 2 there instead of just taking it to overtime. I understand the aggressive play calling, but if you're able to just tie it up, I think it's a safer bet to just go into overtime, get a stop. It wasn't a super high scoring game, so I think it could have been done, but just one of those weird play calls. Just like in last night's game versus the Falcons and the Giants. Obviously, it wasn't a super close game, but towards the end there, they went for a 2 point conversion as opposed to just kicking an extra point and made themselves down by 8. So they have to go for a 2 point conversion again if they were to score a touchdown. Ends up that, obviously the Falcons kicked a field goal and all that. But there's a whole bunch of drama. We'll talk about that a little bit later with the whole play calling there. But just very aggressive play calling lately towards the end of the games and stuff. And I think it's definitely cost teams games, especially with how good the Titans run game looked. They had the 1-2 punch with obviously Henry and Dion Lewis was looking really good this game. Their run game was going. Mariota actually wasn't looking terrible, and they just were able to march down the field methodically and stuff. But it just wasn't enough at the end there because of how they went for the 2 points. We had Philip Rivers throw for over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's doing Philip Rivers things, always flying under the radar. Mariota had a touchdown and 237 yards, sacked twice, both quarterbacks. I think the highlight for this, though, like I said, would be the receiving for second week in a row. Williams had over 100 yards and a touchdown. And I think you need to highlight Dion Lewis on 13 carries had 91 yards. And Derrick Henry, they've been using them more of as a 1-2 punch, but Henry got the lone touchdown in the rushing department. But I think they always kind of put him in towards a goal line anyways, just because of his power halfback capabilities. And I think it's working out nicely over there. We talked about last week how the 1-2 punch of the running back combos don't normally work very well, other than I think the only time I've seen it works pretty good is in Atlanta. And they kind of seem to figure out what they're doing here. Had 164 total yards rushing. Henry and Lewis had a combined over 120. So I think they're starting to figure it out. And where they need to go with that. But I think the Titans are having trouble closing games, and they need to focus on that before like going forward and trying to be aggressive like they were. I think they kind of need to step back and see what's working for them, and when they're in these type of situations, to just kick the extra point, go into overtime, let your defense make a stop, and go kick that field goal to win it, or get a touchdown to win it. I don't necessarily agree with the 2-pointer there, just especially to being that close. They didn't run for the 2-point conversion with how well their run game was working.
Yeah, I mean, sticking with the Titans, Mariota, they definitely, just Mariota as a whole, he definitely did enough in the run game. Was a success this week, but you touched on them finishing games. They also had a missed field goal before they got the ball back for the touchdown, so that even there could have been a game changer for them, and that comes back to, like you said, them not being able to close out games. But with where they're at in the standings and whatnot, it's kind of a head scratcher as to why they just didn't get it into overtime. They proved they were able to stop this offense throughout the day. They did it late in the game when they needed to get the ball back. Why not just take the shot in overtime to see if you can do it?
Yeah, I just don't necessarily agree with the aggressive calls, especially because they seem to have figured out the Chargers this game, and were kind of battling neck and neck, and were able to do what they needed to do to move on and go into overtime and get the win there. And I think this would have been a really big win for them. But I think they need to not hang their heads over this. I just think play calling needs to be a little bit different in these type of situations.
Yeah, no, the players, like I had said, everybody really did everything that they needed to do. Obviously, the missed field goal hurts, and the 2-point not converting that, but that's a coach's decision. More than anything, if you play it safe, it could have been completely different. They could have won by a field goal after a stop against LA in overtime. And then just another thing with that, we talked about this. We talked about Rivers last week a little bit as well. I think he continues to fly under the radar. Obviously, didn't put up a ton of points, but hey, he was 19 for 26 this week, 306 yards, and 2 more touchdowns. I think he needs to start getting some more credit for what he's doing here, especially since they are keeping pace with Kansas City. And going down the stretch here, it's going to be real interesting for the Chargers to see if they can continue to maintain, especially with having Melvin Gordon back. It should take this offense to another level once he gets back in the swing of things.
Most definitely. I think he doesn't get a lot of credit in any years, but especially as of right now, because he's definitely leading these victories, and he needs, get credit when credit is due, and he definitely deserves it. So I think going forward, it'll start to be noticed a little bit more. I think just because the Chargers aren't a team that a lot of people focus on, that's the reason why he's kind of flying under the radar.
Yeah, absolutely, it is.
Our mutual pick for this week was Minnesota versus the New York Jets. Oddly enough, we both have the Jets winning this one. I had faith in the Jets winning this game. Marty had faith in the Jets winning this
I
game.
thought they
Didn't
were going to put up 40 points. I was wrong.
you were close the other way,
Yes,
but
yes, for
not the
Minnesota.
not the Jets. Yes, I don't know. It looked like the Jets were kind of they'd get something going here, get something going there, kind of just piece by piece throughout the season. We're kind of getting things together. Darnold was coming along nicely with his throws, and starting to figure out like what he can do with NFL defenses and what he can't do. Um, but I think this game was just kind of a rewind for the Jets. Obviously, Darnold never puts up huge numbers. It didn't have a terrible stat line, obviously, either. Just his interceptions, I think, were the main focus here. And with those, I think they were definitely costly, especially against such a good Vikings defense.
Yeah, three of
Obviously,
the. Oh, sorry to cut you off there. Just
no,
talking
you're
about
good.
his numbers. 3 of the 4 turnovers were by him. Obviously interceptions, and all 3 of those interceptions led to points. So that was it was a nail in the coffin for them. But other than that, I mean, he didn't look bad. It's hard to say that with 3 picks, but that definitely didn't help the case for New York
Yeah,
there.
yeah, no, definitely, and I think to kind of reiterate what you said, that he looked good, but it's hard to say with those interceptions. It's hard for a rookie quarterback in the NFL to go against a such a tough defense like the Vikings and be able to figure them out quickly and kind of just manage the defensive throws and stuff like that. Um, I I don't know. I feel as if this was a good test for him. And maybe hopefully this progresses him as opposed to, like I said, kind of just putting the brakes on their progress and rolling them back as an offense. I think Darnold doesn't need to focus heavily on this game just because of the Vikings are a really good team. And I think they just played better all around. I think their defense was just a little bit too nice of a matchup against the Jets offense with a rookie quarterback. Obviously, only had 71 rushing yards total, but I'm not focusing on that solely because of the Jets got behind real quickly, and by a decent amount of scores. So obviously they're not going to stick with the run game; they're going to stick with the pass, and I think going off that, then that just kind of leads into more interceptions and such.
Yeah, you're forcing a lot more passes, trying to get down the field quicker. It's going to happen. I mean, I see a lot of people panicking and calling for Darnold's head already. I mean, he's a rookie quarterback. I like what I've seen from him so far. I think you just need to let him continue to grow in there, and good things will come because he's definitely the best QB they've had in we'll say since Fitzmagic, since the Fitzmagic was working for New York. But in terms of a rookie quarterback, he's been their best by far in years.
Yeah, 100%. I'll have to agree with you. I think the whole Fitz magic thing, though. Once again, he was good there for a stretch for the Jets, and then he was kind of looked like Nathan Peterman, to be honest with you. So I, I just I think no need to panic in New York. I think you just need to let this play out. Go forward the next week. Not by any means is your season over because of this loss. This is just obviously a setback, but you just need to keep chugging on forward.
Yeah, touching on the Vikings offense a little bit, Kirk Cousins, he continues to roll for them, continues to grow and roll for them. He was 25 of 40, 241 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Another solid outing for him, and everybody should be proud of me. I figured out how to pronounce this guy's name. Adam Thielen recorded his 7th straight game with 100 yards, 100 plus yards. That's an NFL record. He's actually on pace right now to break the receptions record. He's on pace for 155. So what he's doing there, it's not so much flying under the radar anymore, but for somebody who was undrafted and signed by his home team, it's a heck of a story coming out of Minnesota for him. It's good to see stuff like that.
Sure is heck of a story, and the 1-2 punch of him and Diggs, I think, is scary against any defense. So I think going forward, we're gonna have to see how he continues this success that he's had so far as of late. So we'll just have to see. I One big thing I do want to focus on. Both these teams had absolutely no success in third down efficiency. The Vikings 2 for 15, 13%. And the Jets, oddly enough, had a little bit higher of a percentage, 2 for 13 for 15%. So I think when the Vikings need to, obviously complete those passes or get those extra, 3-4 yards to complete the first down, they are not doing it. So I think maybe because of Thielen and Diggs having that big play capability, they kind of rely on that for the third downs and kind of aim towards having long passes and long bombs and stuff. And I think they need to kind of step it back a little bit from that and go for little short passes, screen passes, little short runs, just other stuff that's working, because obviously your third down efficiency was god awful this game.
Yeah, they definitely have the ability to do it. It just doesn't seem like the play calling is really there for third down. But I could see that being them making that change to that really quick here. They, like I said, they have the ability. So
most definitely with all the talent, especially. We're going to hop into the Thursday night preview. This is between the Dolphins and the Texans. Dolphins 4-3, Texans also 4-3. Actually, I'm kind of excited to watch this one. I think it's the first Thursday night game that I'm excited to watch. So both these teams, obviously Dolphins coming off a loss, Texans coming off a win. I think it's a little bit more important for the Dolphins to win here, Texans. But if the Texans get a win here, I think going forward, they're kind of start to build those wins in their division and kind of jump ahead. Everybody in their division seems to be losing. Jags were kind of only their competition there, and the Titans, and they both lost last week. So Texans kind of jumped ahead there. If they get a win here, then they're looking in really good shape. If the Dolphins get a win here, then they keep on pace with the Patriots. And kind of same thing in their division. Bills falling, Jets falling. So we'll see going forward. But I think the Dolphins have a little bit more drive to win than the Texans for this game.
yeah, both of them. I mean, they both obviously desperately need to win. If Houston can win, it gives them a nice little cushion in the division, that's for sure. And Miami winning keeps them on pace with New England. Not that they're going to dethrone them, but like I said, they both need wins. As of right now, a little bit of news with the game. Tannehill has been ruled out for Thursday. He's going to begin throwing this week, which is a good sign for Miami. I think Osweiler can get it done for them. He is a proven quarterback whether he's overpaid or just sitting on the bench. He has proven himself to be able to go out there and win. It's important for Osweiler to go out there and have a big game, like I said before. He has the capability to do it, but if they could get another win here, finish off 2-1 before Tannehill comes back, if he comes back the following week, that's about all you can expect from a backup, or it's the most you can expect. It's the best outcome. That's what I'm trying to say. 2-1 in a 3-game span with your backup in there is definitely good.
Yeah, and I think Osweiler was just able to do the job. I don't think he's going to excel at it. I don't think he's going to blow anybody out of the water. But if obviously win, if they're obviously able to win with him, then it's huge, because then that when Tannehill does come back, that puts him in good shoes, and he's able to continue the success forward. And even if he struggles that first week, then maybe the momentum going forward for them will allow him to get a win with not so great of a stat line, or not so great of playing. So I think it's important for Osweiler to continue his success, and to, like I said, not blow out teams, because he's not going to do that. But I think he just needs to go in there and do just enough to help them get the win and get out of there, and hopefully they can get Tannehill back. But obviously Osweiler is doing the job right now, so can't complain there.
Yeah, that's all you can ask for.
What are you feeling about Watson? You feel Deshaun's getting his feet wet, or?
I think so. We asked this question last week as to whether they can get the offense going, and they're definitely showing flashes of it. I don't know if this is necessarily the week. It would be a good week to do it against a bottom tier defense. So I think we'll just have to wait and see. The run game obviously performed well this past week, so hopefully they can at least keep that up, and we'll see what Watson's able to do. But they're definitely trending in the right direction. That is for sure.
Yeah, I think so, for sure. He's not putting up his huge stat lines like he was last year, but like we said last week, I think still getting his feet wet. I still think he's getting into routines and stuff. An injury like his is just, it's so serious to come back from, that he's not going to jump right back into the crazy 400-yard games with 5 touchdowns and such. I think he just needs to be more methodical and manage things, and just help his team get wins, because I feel that's really all he cares about anyways. He's a humble guy, and he's not a worrier for, oh no, I didn't throw for 300 yards this week, or I didn't get 3 touchdowns. So I think going forward that Houston will be all right, and their defense will keep them in things. Speaking of, do you think their defense keeps the Dolphins at bay? Do you think that they kind of get exposed a little bit? Obviously, we've seen flashes of the Dolphins' offense looking pretty good this season, but then we've also seen that they've kind of been lackluster. So I want to hear your thoughts.
I think the defense is gonna not have its worst game. They are gonna struggle a little bit. I think Osweiler gives the Dolphins a bit of a different look. Him and Tannehill are somewhat similar, but it still definitely gives them a different look. I think that where the Houston Texans are gonna shine in this game is being able to stop the run combo that the Dolphins have, and I think if they can do that and just manage Brock Osweiler and what he can do through the air, they'll be all right. Watson just has to continue to do just enough, and I think the defense will be able to carry most of this game otherwise.
Yeah. I think strictly just because of what I saw from Miami, what they did to the Bears defense, that they are going to give the Texans kind of a run for their money. But I also feel as if it could kind of go either way. But I think the D might get exposed for the Texans here on this game. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I think the Dolphins have enough weapons, and they have enough chemistry on their offense to kind of expose what they've seen on film for the Texans in their first couple games.
Yeah, they definitely did a wonderful job against Chicago. So it'll be interesting to see if the tape work and adjustments will pan out for them again. I definitely could see it happening, but I think Houston should be able to keep them at bay for the most part.
Yeah. Texans run game, you think it continues going forward? Obviously, Lamar Miller having 100 game. Do you think this kind of success goes week to week? You think it continues throughout the season? Do you think it's kind of a trend, or you think that Miller kind of got lucky last week?
I think he got a little bit lucky last week. Obviously, you don't want to think like that. You want to think that you're improving. But I could see them continuing to do well on the ground. If Watson, if Deshaun Watson can get the passing game going a little bit more to have the complement the 1-2 punch with the run pass, the run game is definitely going to benefit from it. So they don't have to rely on it as much. I'd also like to, just staying with the run game in general, I'd like to see Watson get out there and break loose a little bit more. Obviously, I think he's still a little bit worried with coming back from the injury. Doesn't want to re-injure. He's kind of playing safe, but I think if they can start getting him out there and getting him a little bit more mobile again, that'll improve the run game as well. Having multiple threats back there.
Yeah, I think he's a little tentative with his and a little maybe shy um, to do so, just because of his injury and how serious it was last year. I think he wants to stick with his team this year and hopefully guide them through the playoffs and stuff. So I would love to see it, but I don't know if we will.
Yeah, I mean, when you come back from an injury like that, there's the potential to completely change your style, which I don't necessarily think he's done yet. But if he continues to trend this way, where he's somewhat tentative, like you said, he may just become more of a bit of a pocket passer.
Yeah, most definitely. We're gonna trend into we're doing for this week a couple early season awards, and a couple other just little notes we have for teams halfway through here. The first thing that we want to cover is league MVP going forward, who we think maybe by the end of the year will be crowned with the MVP. My pick for this is Todd Gurley. He's just been absolutely dominant throughout the whole season so far. Just looking at his stats, 144 attempts, 686 yards. He's averaging 4.8 yards a carry, and he's averaging 98 yards a game. He has 11 rushing touchdowns, and he has caught 25 passes out of the backfield for 270 yards and 3 touchdowns. He has 14 touchdowns total, which is absolutely huge. 14 touchdowns total is actually more than 8 teams in the NFL this year so far through as many games.
Isn't that crazy?
If
I saw that the other day. That is absolutely nuts.
Absolutely nuts. So if you just want to put that into perspective, this man is producing as much as 8 other whole offenses. Um, to score 14 touchdowns through not even halfway through the season is absolutely incredible. So I just can see his stat line continuing, and if not anything, just to keep improving throughout the season.
Yeah, no, he's a solid pick. He's definitely my number two. But my number one, I have to go with Patrick Mahomes. To this point in the season, he has 163 completions in 251 attempts, 2,228 yards to 22 TDs, and just 5 interceptions. Doing some quick math, he's on pace for roughly 48 touchdowns, which is absolutely amazing for a guy who's essentially in his first year in the league, first year as a starter, obviously. What he's been able to do there in Kansas City for them to just keep winning them games like he has with such a poor defense on the other side there, it's astonishing. Has led them to a 6-1 start. Arguably, they could be 7-0 if the defense could have just made one stop in the game in New England. But I don't see him really slowing down anytime soon. He's gonna have a hiccup here or there. That's just part of the NFL season. But he's gonna keep them rolling, and I see him by year's end being the MVP. It's gonna be real close with Gurley though. He's single-handedly won them. We could argue 2 games for the Rams. Denver last week being one of them with 200 plus on the ground. So it'll
Yeah,
be
I
interesting.
I mean, I guess you could argue that basically every game he's been a factor. I
Yeah.
mean, to almost average 100 yards each in every game. Uh, you obviously make some type of impact, and to be scoring 14 times throughout the season. Obviously, many of his games, multiple touchdowns. Um, it's just he's a huge factor on offense, and I think every defense needs to account for him and cover for him. Obviously, leaving other sides of the ball open, and not to say that Jared Goff hasn't had a pretty great year so far too with his receivers and his options.
It's definitely hard for running back to win an MVP. I'm not exactly sure who the last one to do it was, but Todd Gurley is definitely on pace to do it, just based on what he's been able to do for the Rams. Goff, you could argue, is in the top 5 for talks of it as well, but he's definitely not ahead of Todd.
No, I don't think so. Speaking of valuable players, let's talk about the least valuable players for each team that or not each team. I'm sorry, our top picks for the league. I'll let you take this one away because I think yours is a little bit more, say, popular opinion than mine.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. My least valuable player to this point is Derek Carr. While he's been pretty effective in terms of accuracy through the air, with 167 completions to 232 or 33 attempts, that's a little bit over 70% accuracy. He has 1,783 yards on the season, 7 TDs, and 8 interceptions. Another notable stat for him is he's been sacked 18 times or 17 times on the season. And to put that into perspective, he was only sacked 20 times last year, so obviously the line hasn't been doing him any favors there. But to see how fast the Oakland Raiders as a whole and Derek Carr have fallen has been pretty amazing to me. Obviously, Derek Carr, at least in my opinion, is not an elite quarterback, but he is good enough to get your team to the playoffs. You could argue a couple years ago when he got hurt late in the season that was their year. Obviously, we'll never know, but Oakland as a whole. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think Oakland Raiders fans would say every year is their year. So
And the Cleveland
might
Browns
be
just turned it in there.
yeah, yeah. Just to run that back, I think it might be a little overstated, but yeah, no, I kind of agree that their season kind of went backwards once he got injured. But I definitely think they could have made it without him.
Yeah, no, they could have. They could have done a little bit more. I mean, they could have done the Steelers a favor and possibly beating New England that year. Not that we need to get into that, but just as I mean, obviously Oakland is struggling
It's a
this
soft
year.
spot, okay?
Yeah, exactly. Obviously Oakland is absolutely struggling as a whole this year, but I think you need to see a lot better from Derek Carr. There's talk in Oakland right now about him having a major disconnect from the team and his teammates as a whole. He recently tweeted that he is basically loyal to Oakland and doesn't, or well, Oakland slash Las Vegas. He wants to be a Raider, is more or less what he put. But if that's the case, he needs to absolutely be better, or John Gruden's going to be trading him for a first round pick here before the end of the month.
Yeah, it seems to be trending for what the Raiders like to do with their team is kind of just fire sale them. So we'll see where Derek Carr ends up at the end of this year. But hey, 3 first round picks for the Raiders going forward here for next year. So maybe they'll get one good player out of that.
Yeah, all I was gonna say, all they have to do is not screw up those 3 picks. It's all they have to do, and maybe they can have a bounce back year. Maybe.
Yeah, and I mean 1 for 3 success rate. I don't think that's too much to ask for them. I think they definitely need it for sure. Um, my least valuable player is Jordan Howard of the Chicago Bears. Obviously, hasn't had a absolutely terrible season. Hasn't had a lackluster season, I don't think. But I think he's kind of not meeting expectations for where he needs to be. He is the starting running back in Chicago. He's 90 attempts, 311 yards. He's averaging just 3.5 yards a carry. He's only averaging 51.8 yards a game. He has a total of 2 touchdowns on the season, both on the ground, and he has 11 receptions for 87 yards. obviously with Tariq Cohen being in the backfield with him, being a receiving back, he's gonna eat away at some of the usage that they're gonna have for Jordan Howard, some of his catches and such like that. Although they did talk about this year, uh, him improving his receiving game and getting him more reps for like passing plays and such. Don't really know if it's translated out on the field. And I'm not really sure why, but I just think he's had a very lackluster season so far for kind of what people expected for him, with him having over 1,000 yards last season. I think he's definitely not going to hit that mark this year.
No, he's not. I mean, with that compliment back there with Cohen obviously being more of a receiving back, it is taken a little bit away from him. But looking at his 90 attempts in the 3.5, that's down a half a yard from his previous season, almost a whole yard from the season before that. So he's definitely trending in the wrong direction. Like I think we like to say a lot, there's always time to turn it around. It's just really a matter of whether he can or not. But I don't see him matching or getting real close to his previous two seasons in terms of statistics.
Nope, I don't either.
Alrighty, on to my no, no, no. What do we got next here? Oh, okay. Next up, we have our surprise team for the year up to this point. For me, I have the Washington Redskins. They're sitting at 4-2 right now, right in the race for actually first in the division. Sorry, my apologies. The big thing for them is Adrian Peterson. When I heard that they picked him up, I wasn't really sure what to think of that. I thought he was pretty much done, played out, had
I don't
enough.
think anybody knew what to think of it, to be honest with
No,
you.
no, they did not. But but he definitely has had somewhat of a resurgence in Washington. It's been a big help for them on the ground. He's their leading rusher with 101 carries, 438 yards, 3 touchdowns as well. He's averaging 4.3 a carry. That's definitely a big part of their success. But I also have to give it up to Alex Smith. Our word of the week last week was game manager, and Alex Smith is another one of them. He's done just enough there to get the job done for them up to this point. Obviously, like I said, 4-2, sitting atop the division. They finished 7-9 last year. They're trending in the right direction. I don't see them falling off too much. Their schedule, looking down the road here, is it's a bit of a mixed bag. Not anything that really sticks out to me. If Jacksonville was maybe performing a little bit above where they're at, that could definitely be a challenge for them. But Philadelphia is really the only game for me that they may want to be worried about. Or you could even you could argue Atlanta. Atlanta's on the rise as well right now. But they're definitely my surprise team so far this year.
Yeah, everybody gets a bonus for the vocab word of the week, also being game manager once again this week. Um, I I have to agree with you. I don't think with Alex Smith moving over to the Redskins that I saw them being a contender this year, but they're definitely in the playoff race and continuing and progressing forward, not rewinding like a lot of teams do. So I think it's definitely a team to look out for here. Late in December, early in December, to see kind of where they're going to be finishing out. But I honestly have them maybe a little bit of a hot take, but winning that division this year.
Yeah, I mean they could absolutely do it. It's not the strongest division right now, so they definitely have the potential to do it. The one thing that worries me with them is they don't have a great receiving core. Alex Smith has done a decent job spreading the ball out. He has 5 receivers with 10 plus receptions. Nobody really stands out. Jordan Reed, their tight end, you could argue is their best receiver that they have.
Yeah, and he's been letting me down on fantasy all year.
Yeah, I mean all the receivers have just been just about average, but like I said before, word of the week, game manager. He's been able to get it done through the air for them, and then the compliment with AP on the ground has them trending upwards.
Yeah, they got CT and AP back in the backfield. Chris Thompson and Adrian Peterson. I think because of their tandem that Alex Smith doesn't need to put up big numbers. It kind of just enables them to not be an overpowering offense, but they kind of just have the right workings of their offense and defense to just win them games. I don't think anything really sticks out on that team too much. There's not really any superstars or absolute uh, Pro Bowl nominees there.
Yeah, no, definitely not. But they do stand out.
My pick for the surprise team was the Panthers. Obviously, huge beating the Eagles this past week, 21-17. I honestly I saw it coming, but I was still shocked when it happened when they ended up beating the Eagles. They have a little bit of a tough schedule going forward here, playing the Ravens this upcoming weekend. Play the Buccaneers. They play the Steelers on the 8th of November. And they kind of trails off a little bit. They got the Lions, Seahawks, Buccaneers, Browns. But then it's always that fight in this division towards the end of the season. They play the Saints, then they play the Falcons, and then they play the Saints again. So their
Not an
last
easy
three
finish.
games is not an easy finish by any means, and it's going to be basically the division fight. So I think this division kind of goes down to the wire. Towards that last week, I think is when they're going to be able to decide who's making it in and who's not, because I think that's how close it's going to be.
Yeah, it always seems to be that way in this division. It's an exciting one to watch. It's not exciting, I guess, to be a fan of, but it
Yeah,
should
I
be
feel for
interesting.
you. I feel for you.
Especially with, I mean, I said last week that the Atlanta needed to win out, and so far so good since I've said that. We'll see if they continue to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I I think just because of everybody. I mean, Saints obviously heading the division, um, 5-1, and then Panthers 4-2, Buccaneers 3-3, and the Falcons 3-4. Nobody is out of this division at all. So we'll see going forward. Um, we're gonna trend into the underachieving teams for us and our picks. So we
I can kick it off if you'd
are.
like.
Yeah, yeah, we'll do that. I guess a main word that we used for these teams is surprised. Kind of shocked and not expecting the records as of right now that they're standing at for these teams.
All right, so the team that I picked for underachieving is the New York Giants. They sit at 1-6, and it's pretty obvious to me. They have too many offensive weapons, especially to be sitting at 1-6. And you could argue that these offensive weapons have pretty much done everything that they can to try to get them in the win column more than one time, and it just has not been enough for the Giants.
Speaking of 140 yards and a touchdown from OBJ, and I think over 100 scrimmage yards for Barkley and a touchdown yesterday.
Yeah, I
So
mean
yeah,
that
they're
should absolutely be enough on most given Sundays or Mondays whenever a team is playing to get the job done. Like I said, the offense is definitely doing their part. Um, People in New York not too sure what to think of Eli right now, and I think I had talked about this last week about how bad the offensive line is. Obviously, it's not affecting Barkley, but Eli is on pace to be sacked 48 times this year, which would be a career high for him. He's getting the literal crap beat out of him back there, and I think that's one of the biggest issues they could be doing. They could be putting up a lot more offensive numbers, especially through the air. I think if he wasn't getting hit so darn much, and obviously sticking with the offense, Barkley has done his part to keep this team in games. He has 800 plus yards from scrimmage through week 7. He is their second leading receiver right now, behind OBJ. I mean, I throw my hands up, and what more does this team really need to do? It's obvious they need improvements on the offensive line. I think that would make a gigantic difference for them. But I just think even as bad as it is, they should not be 1-6 with all these weapons.
yeah, absolutely. Sticking in the division, I picked the Eagles for the underachieving team here. Obviously coming out as Super Bowl champs, everybody would love to see depending on if you're a fan or not. You just like to see the repeat contenders coming out of the Super Bowl. So they come back out of the gates hot and are winning games consistently, and something the Eagles just aren't. They're not winning games consistently. They're not winning games they should. Kind of struggling on both sides of the ball. I think more so defensively as opposed to offensively. Obviously, you can focus on the run game though. Run game's kind of lackluster, like
No
we
run
said.
game at all whatsoever.
Yeah, but I think like we had talked about before, I think they're happy where their run game is. I think they don't want to have to give up anybody that's currently on the team in order to get a running back in return. I think that Ajahi injury was definitely detrimental to their success, but I also think that their two running backs that they have right now, Smallwood and Clement, need to step up and uh, and do something in regards to trying to help their team win and stuff, because what they're doing right now is just not enough.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely not. I don't put really much blame at all on the offense. The defense coughed up a 17-point lead this past Sunday to lose this game. But since Carson Wentz has come back, I thought he's looked pretty good. At this point in the season, he has 10 TDs to 1 interception, as well as 1,502 yards. He's definitely looked like himself coming back from injury. I would say more so than Deshaun Watson has, even though he's played the whole season. Um, the lack of run game, I think, is hurting them, but also you're not seeing the explosive plays from Philadelphia's offense like we were used to seeing last year. Even after Wentz went down, they still had the ability to do that. You're just missing that. They have all the pieces. Ertz, Jeffrey just coming back from injury as well. Other than Ajayi, this offense is pretty much perfectly healthy. They really don't have any excuses to not be performing, but they are for the most part. Like I said, I think we just need to see more of those splash and explosive plays like we're used to seeing, and they could definitely be a big factor in helping them improve.
Just a little a side note here. Yeah, Eagles have not scored more than 23 points this season, other than their game against the Giants um, the previous week. And I don't. I mean, the Giants team is obviously struggling severely, so I can't even tally that as a good thing. Um, Scoring, not more than 23 points is not usually going to win you a game when your defense is not really doing its job. So there's definitely no sunshine in Philadelphia as of right now.
Yeah, they had going back just talking about the points. They had 8 games last season where they scored 30 or more. One where they scored 51, and that's a credit to that explosive offense who was able to just throw up numbers like it was nothing. They also had the ability to win close games and close out games last year, and we saw that they couldn't do that this past Sunday, especially. That's going to the defense. The defense hasn't been terrible, but throwing the game away like they did, that doesn't do any favors for the confidence, especially on the defensive side of the ball. It was a game that they should have won.
Yeah, most definitely. Um, we're gonna go into the league news now. Just kind of stuff that's been happening around the league in the past week or so, and there's been a lot of it. So I'll let you start with this one, since you seem to be a little bit more passionate than I am about it.
All right, Blake Bortles, he got benched on Sunday, and I'm as an outside, as just a fan of the NFL as a whole, I'm thinking, wow, Jacksonville fans must be so happy. Finally, nobody wanted him re-signed, even after everything he did for him last year. He gets benched. Cody Kessler goes in there. Word comes out today that Blake Bortles is starting this Sunday. It's a head scratcher. I don't really understand what is really left or what needs to be seen from him to know that he is not the guy for them. I mean, I'll give him credit. He had an incredible run last year down the stretch and into the playoffs, complemented obviously with a fantastic defense. But I just don't understand Jacksonville putting him back in there. At least give Kessler the start and see what he does. If you want to throw Bortles back in the following week, if Kessler has a terrible outing, go for it. But this one just does not make sense to me as to why he's starting now.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think they need to give Kessler a shot and just see how things go with him as opposed to getting Bortles the start. I don't really know why they gave him the nod this week after excuse me after everything that happened last week, especially because Kessler didn't look bad. So we'll see if something changes in Jacksonville, but if not, I see the downward trend continuing.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's going to take much more, but then again, he is back in there after a bad game. But I think he's going to be on a real short leash this week, like very, very, very short.
We'll just have to wait and see.
Yes, we will.
Um, so Amari Cooper to Cowboys, first round pick. Definitely something I wouldn't have given up for this receiver. I would say maybe a second round pick, maybe 2 years from now, or a third round pick for next year. But Cooper has just been struggling ever since his first year in the league, and I don't see a team change helping his struggles.
Yeah, no, I mean this is interesting. Obviously, Oakland getting another first round pick. It wouldn't shock me by the 30th if they have five more. But Cooper going to the Cowboys, I don't know if a change of scenery will do anything. Obviously, it seems like every player is kind of miserable on Oakland right now. And then going to Dak, I honestly think that's kind of a downgrade in quarterbacks for him. Um, One thing that I can say about Cooper, he has the ability to break free from man coverage relatively easy. He's really good at doing that. That's one thing that stands out. But I think, see, it's hard to say. I mean, the Cowboys lost a first round pick. It's hard to say that they won in this, but they absolutely needed a receiver, with Beasley being the best that they have right now. I think we'll just have to kind of see this play out. I don't really see him doing anything outstanding in Dallas, and not only that, he could potentially just be a rental anyway because talks are that he wants number one wide receiver money come year's end, and I just don't see Dallas fishing that out to him unless he has a spectacular second half of the season with them.
Which will not happen.
No,
So
no, probably not.
he will be shopped off to a team that has some cap room, and will not get the money he wants. But I don't see him being in Dallas next year either.
No, no, not at all. Moving on, next topic. We pretty much covered this, but we'll talk about it for a second here anyway. Patrick Mahomes being the real deal. When I watch Patrick Mahomes, which I have been intrigued to watch him ever since they played the Steelers, I see a lot of Brett Favre in this kid, especially with the arm and just the pass. It's just beautiful. To talk about baseball players having a beautiful swing, this kid has a beautiful pass. Spiral every time. He's definitely the real deal, I believe. It's not going to come without hiccups. I know we said that earlier. He's going to have his struggles this season, and if he can face adversity like that and get through it, I think we're going to have a hell of a QB in the league for the years to come.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think he kind of took the league by storm because nobody expected it, especially because he played a game and I would say like a half last year, and he looked okay, but he didn't look anything spectacular. Obviously, um, it wasn't a very meaningful game, so I don't know if he really cared to show off his real skills and stuff. But he's definitely the real deal, and I think out of these quarterbacks that it's their first year, true first year. He's looking to be the front runner out of that whole class.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch him going forward here.
In terrible New York Giants news, Eli Apple gets traded to the Saints. Um, Saints give up a fourth round pick in 2019, a seventh round pick in 2020. This doesn't make sense to me for the Giants to do, unless they're expecting just a whole new rebuild on their defensive side of the ball. But for them to sign OBJ to such a huge contract and stuff, you would think that they're really not trying to rebuild in the middle of a huge contract with him. You would think they would just be trying to get other players to win with so that he could win here and want to stay here for maybe the next contract moving forward. But they give up arguably, I would say, their best cornerback in the Giants, and for basically receiving not too much in return, other than some picks. Don't receive any defensive help or anything, which obviously the Saints need a little bit of secondary help, so that's why they wanted the Eli Apple trade. But just to get nothing really in return, it just I don't think it's a wise move on the Giants' end.
No, I don't. And if you listen to rumblings going back to when he was drafted, a lot of people in New York say he was a big issue, a cancer, so to speak, quoted by Landon Collins actually last year. I don't even so much the Giants getting rid of him. I don't know if this was the right move for the Saints. The Saints, I like what they have going on down there on both sides of the ball. I don't really know if you want to bring somebody like this in. Not to say that hey, maybe he wanted out so bad that's why he acted like that, and maybe it'll be different down in New Orleans, but I'm kind of worried for the Saints in their locker room with bringing Apple in. But we're just gonna have to see. Maybe, like I said, maybe he just wanted that change of scenery, and maybe he'll clean his act up down there.
Yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Marshawn Lattimore and Eli Apple on the edges, obviously a pretty scary Buckeye tandem.
Yeah, I mean from looking at it like the on field standpoint, oh man, that's scary. But it's the off the field stuff definitely that worries me.
Yeah, and I think understandably so. He had his issues in New York, but from all the rumblings over there, I think a lot of people have issues in New York. So I don't know. Maybe if it's like you said, maybe it's not a player issue; it's a team issue.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. Moving on to the next bit of league news. Patrick Peterson. Obviously, there's been talk all week about him getting traded, wanting to be traded. Uh, where does he land up? There's talk, at least here in Pittsburgh, about the Steelers wanting him. The Steelers have never traded away a first round pick, which is what Arizona is looking for in return for Patrick Peterson. However, if by some miracle they decided to do it, what a combo Joe Hayden and Patrick Peterson would be.
Oh yes, don't all the Yinzers drool their mouth at this thought? But I don't see them pursuing it. They didn't want didn't get what they wanted with the trade with Bell, so they kind of stopped the talks with that. I don't think the Steelers really have anything to give up for Peterson. I feel it's a little bit more hefty than a first round pick. Obviously, we don't know the real details of the the trade offer, but I feel as if it is a first round pick and then some. And I don't I just don't feel the Steelers are going to give it up. Obviously, with how not willing they were to bend on the contract with Bell, even though obviously they worked and worked and worked and worked to try and get a contract that he would be happy with, and he still wasn't happy with. I just feel like them adding somebody like Peterson, although like I said, many Yinzers would love it. I don't think that type of contract would be something that they would want landing in Pittsburgh. I see him going to Indianapolis. I see him going to Houston.
New England,
Um,
New England will sneak in there and get him watch.
we'll see. They picked up their star athlete for the year that they'll ship off next year, and Josh Gordon. I see Miami, Houston, or Indianapolis. I feel the Jets are happy with their defense right now. So maybe not after this week, last week, but they do have a pretty talented young defense. So there's a lot of upside for them. So I see top three would be Miami, Houston, and the Colts.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it plays out, but he is for sure going to be gone. I guess we can just touch on this a little bit, just because we're talking about the Steelers real quick. Rumbling started up again about him, Lev Bell, being traded today. The rumor is that the Packers are actually interested. They're looking to give up a second round pick and Ty Montgomery for Le'Veon Bell. I've since the beginning I've thought get rid of him, whatever it takes. I would be fine with this trade. You get rid of the rest of that the salary, so you open up a little bit more room. I think at that point they could potentially take on Peterson. Not that they're going to do that. The the Cardinals would have to be willing to take a second round pick or two because, like I said, the Steelers are not going to give up a first rounder. But if the Bell trade is actually true, if that's something that Green Bay is really truly pursuing, I would be okay with it. Since the beginning I've wanted Le'Veon Bell gone. It's just a headache. It's just something that the team doesn't need.
Yeah, I I don't know. I'm at like a crossroads here with it. I would love for him to stay in uniform. Obviously, I don't feel after this year that that would be the case. I feel they're going to let him walk in free agency, especially with the recent situation with James Conner and how well he's been playing. I don't see them forking over that much cash for him just simply because Connor has put up the same numbers that he has in Bell's absence. So we'll have to see what happens, but I don't think that they would give Bell up just for that little. A second round pick in time. We don't need another running back really. We're running back, wide receiver, whatever you want to throw him in as. Um, I think if it was a trade was to happen, it would be a first or second round pick and a defensive player
Yeah.
because the Steelers know that we need defense and not really so much the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, just some rumblings, but I mean we've heard rumblings the last 2 months
Oh, we've
already.
heard
So
rumblings all season, and I am so sick of it. But the most recent rumor of Bell is that he's just not signing his uh, tag until after the trade deadline, so that he can't be traded.
yeah, I
Which
mean
would be good news for people that would like Bell on the team because that means that he wants to stay with the team. But I don't know. Like you said, it's one giant headache this year.
yeah, it'll be nice once this situation is just done. Whether he actually shows up or we have to play this out all season with, oh hey, is he coming back? But we'll just have to wait and see. I'm sick of talking about it. We're gonna probably bring it up every chance we get until it's resolved. But I can't wait
Yeah,
for it to be done.
it's the tandem of bringing Le'Veon Bell up and reminding people that James Conner is a cancer
Yes,
survivor.
yes, we haven't heard that actually in a couple weeks, but we're definitely due. One of these primetime games. You wait, it's coming.
I'm sure we'll hear it
I
this week against the Browns.
something, yeah, yeah, yeah.
The last and final league note that we have, I guess it's not news, but I had talked about it earlier. The end of the Giants game. Um, we're gonna put you in this situation real quick, okay? So the score is 23-12. Giants get the ball back with give or take about a minute 40. Get down the field, no problem. They get down into the Falcons 10. Within the Falcons 10, actually, I think they were on like the 8 or 9 yard line. It's about a buck, I'd say about a buck 20 left on the clock. Eli completes a pass. They get it down to about like the 1 or 2, and they line up, hurry up, line up, do a QB sneak. Fail on this QB sneak. No big deal. Whatever. I guess it's not really something I would call probably at that time, just because you're trying to score a little bit faster. If you throw it, obviously it's incomplete. Clock stops. They get up, hurry up, and then they QB sneak it again. In this time, and when they Eli tried to force it over the goal line twice, they get absolutely no yardage. They run over 40 seconds off the clock, and this leaves them about 20 seconds left to call a play. And they throw it into the end zone. OBJ does a nice little Tony toe tap. But at this point, it's kind of useless, kind of pointless. They just kick the extra point, call it a day. I'm sorry, no, they don't kick the extra point. They go for two, get the two. Saquon runs it in. Then they go to kick it. 5 seconds left, so there's still a hope. What do they? No onside kick. They boot the ball down the field, little pooch kick down to about the 40-ish. Falcons recover it. They kneel it. Game end. There's a lot of questions. um, I just the whole end of the game was just one big confusion. Um, obviously that 2 point conversion that I talked about earlier, that they went for and didn't get. Just kick the extra point there. I know you're aggressive to get a win. Kick the extra point there. All you have to do is score a touchdown. You're good. They score that touchdown. Everything's fine, and they're all tied up. Who knows? The Falcons field goal at the end there might not even happen, and the game would be 2020. But instead, go for the two, fail there, and then this whole BS after that. I mean, Eli's 37 years old. He knows what he's doing. To run two consecutive quarterback sneaks, I just, I don't know. I guess what you could say is what's going on in New York. I mean, it's been a theme of this episode, but I think everybody's thinking it. What is going on?
Yeah, I mean, just going back, like my thoughts on what they were doing with the two QB sneaks, and this takes me back to last year versus New England. And after the Jesse James touchdown came back, the Steelers looked lost, had no plays ready to go. Once they got back on the field there with limited time left, I think after the QB sneak, obviously the Eagles, um, the Falcons obviously think that they're gonna spike the ball. So at that point, fake spike, whatever, it could work. I just don't understand why you're QB sneaking it. Like, pitch it off to Barkley, throw something over the top if you get OBJ or wide receiver loose.
You have arguably a top three wide receiver in the league, and arguably a top five running back in the league this year, and you utilize neither of them to get that necessary touchdown.
I mean, I would put this on Eli more than anything. I cannot see any coordinator, coach whatsoever. Okay, go for the sneak. If you don't get it, go for it again.
No, and
You know what I
that's
mean?
yeah, no, and that is the issue. It's completely on Eli. I mean, in those times, the 2 minute offense, the hurry up offense, it's not on the offensive coordinator. It never is. It's he's allowing Eli to make a play call in that, but
You would
I
think
just
at 37 with all these years in the league, he would have had the common sense. After that failed, the clock's running off. Get your ass up there, spike the ball. Like just stop the clock. Even like the few seconds saved. It just doesn't make any sense.
yeah, I just like I said, I was confused with a lot of their play calling toward the end there, but I guess that's why they're 1-6. So
Yeah, it all ties together. It all makes sense.
yeah. So on that note, we're gonna we're gonna wrap up this episode of YinzersYak. It's been an interesting one. Um, we'll try and pick a different team to theme the episode around on next week. I just felt the Giants were it was too odd and comical of a game to not highlight the many things that went wrong there. But we will see you guys Saturday. Um, and we will be previewing some good games this weekend. Obviously, Steelers playing the Browns.
Get that homer back in. Let's go.
Yeah, Steelers playing the Browns. Very important divisional game, obviously, especially with the first one resulting in a tie for both teams. So I think both teams come out hungry, and I think this is going to be a good week for some football. So we will see you guys Saturday. Marty, I'll let you do your little outro, buddy.
Well, as always, guys, I appreciate y'all listening to us to yak. Let me do that again. Jesus. I said y'all, not even yins.
Unbelievable. You're not even a true Yinzer.
The fuck? All right, say I'll let you do my outro, then I'll
go. All right, Marty. Oh my god, my mic. Yep. All right, ready? All right, Marty, I'll let you do your outro now, buddy.
Alrighty. Well, as always, guys, thank you for Why am I fucking? What is wrong with me? Like, thank Yins for listening. That doesn't sound right even. I don't even think I've said Yins before. Why is this so difficult all of a sudden? Like, what the fuck? Thank you for listening to us, Yak, as always. Okay, there we go. Go.
All right, Marty, I'll let you blast your little outro.
As always, guys, thank you for listening to us, Yak, and we'll see you guys on Saturday. And gals, if any gals are listening out there, we'll see you.
Yep. See you then. Have a good rest of your week.